Peter here, this is Amazon Rufus, and today we're digging into why Rufus ignores your electronics bullet points when a shopper asks for a product comparison. Most sellers assume Rufus reads listing copy to answer comparison questions. It doesn't start there. It starts with your structured catalog data, the fields sitting in your flat file that most sellers haven't touched since the listing went live. If those fields are empty, Rufus either skips your product in the comparison or gets the specs wrong. Here's the situation. A shopper opens Rufus and types, what's the difference between these two wireless earbuds, or which laptop has better battery life for travel? That's not a standard product search. That's triggering a specific function inside Rufus, a spec comparison engine that works differently from product discovery queries. Here's what's actually happening under the hood. Rufus runs on a retrieval augmented generation architecture. Before it writes a single word of a comparison response, it pulls data from available sources and ranks those sources by reliability. Amazon's structured catalog database sits at the top of that hierarchy. It's machine readable, normalized, and low latency. Your bullet points are unstructured text. They require semantic interpretation. They sit lower in the retrieval priority stack. So when Rufus builds a spec comparison, it's querying your flat file attribute fields first, battery life in hours, Bluetooth version, Wi-Fi standard, charging wattage, connector type, screen resolution, refresh rate, processor family. If those fields are blank, Rufus either drops your product from the comparison or falls back to listing copy to fill the gaps. And when it falls back to copy, accuracy drops. We've seen Rufus describe a 30-hour battery as a long-lasting battery life because the battery life field was empty, and that was the best it could extract from unstructured text. The shopper interpreted that as less impressive than a competitor who had 30 hours in a structured field. Sale lost before the buyer even clicked through. There's also a format problem that compounds this, and almost nobody talks about it. If your listing has battery life 30 hours in the structured field and a competitor has battery capacity 1,500 milliampere hours, those are two different data types describing different dimensions of the same characteristic. Rufus's comparison engine needs to resolve those into a single output. When it can't match them cleanly, it hedges. Both offer solid battery performance. Or it abandons the structured data and falls back to copy. The fix is using Amazon's exact field label conventions and numeric values where the field expects them. 30 in a field that expects hours. Not 30 hours, not 30, not long-lasting. The machine needs a number. There's one more failure mode worth knowing about. Listings get updated, copy gets refreshed, specs get corrected, but backend attribute fields often don't get updated alongside. So you end up with a structured field saying one thing and a bullet point saying another. Rufus can surface both sources in a comparison response, and when they contradict each other, buyers notice. Return rates on electronics spike when the product arrives and doesn't match what the AI told the customer. So what can you actually test? The audit is simpler than most sellers expect. Use a secondary Amazon account and ask Rufus to compare your product against your top competitor. Type it like a real shopper would. What's the difference between X and Y? Or which one is better for Z? Watch exactly which specs appear, which are described vaguely, and which are missing entirely. Missing specs are unfilled fields, vague descriptions, are specs Rufus had to interpret from copy rather than read from structured data. Wrong specs are either incorrect field values or conflicts between your structured data and listing copy. After identifying the gaps, go into Seller Central, open your listing editor, and work through the Vital Info and More Details tabs systematically. Electronic subcategories have different attribute requirements between headphones, laptops, cables, and smart home devices. So work from the actual flat file template for your specific subcategory rather than just like what the simplified editor shows you. Then rerun the Rufus comparison test. In most cases, the change in response quality is visible within 24 to 48 hours of the catalog update being processed. The broader point here is that catalog management is now a search optimization task. For most of Amazon's history, backend attribute fields mattered for browse node assignment and basic filtering. They didn't determine how your product was described to a buyer. Rufus changed that. Those fields are now content, what the AI reads, trusts, and cites when a buyer asks a comparison question. Electronics flat file templates have over 100 potential attribute fields. Most sellers fill roughly 20% of them. That gap is where Rufus comparison visibility is being won and lost right now. This episode is brought to you by Atomic, growth-oriented Amazon services for sellers who've outgrown generic agencies.